This is The Data Slice, hosted by the Data Science Alliance. It's where we sit down to talk all things data science, AI, and tech, any way you slice it. I'm Callan Kaufman, and joining us today is Rajesh Gupta. Super excited to have you meet him and hear all about his industry insight. I'm going to let you tell your story, but just a little few things about Rajesh for our friends who might not know you listen to the podcast. I know that you are the interim dean of the School of Computing, Information, and Data Sciences at UC San Diego, founding director of the Halıcıoğlu Data Science Institute, also at UCSD. And I know that you're a very distinguished professor of computer science and engineering. That's a pretty simple summary. I know there's so much that you do. So thank you so much for coming on our podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, Callan, for inviting me.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. You've been a supporter of DSA for a while. We really appreciate it. So excited to kind of highlight you and the work that you've been doing. I was thinking to get started, maybe first you could just tell us, a little more about you. I just did a really short summary of what you're up to these days. So could you tell us a little more about the path that led you to where you are now? What kind of sparked your interest in it?
Well, so let me start from the beginning. I started my working career working at Intel as a chip designer. And I used to work on devices and circuits. I designed circuits that went into microprocessors. And after doing that for 7 years, I joined academia. And at that point, my focus shifted from design to design automation. And what that meant was the tools that you need to build these chips. The chips are so large and big that they are actually built by tools. And the same story of moving up in level of abstraction from devices to circuits to chips, to systems, to software, to operating systems, to applications, to networks, will sort of repeat multiple times in my career. And you can think of it as a large, very deep sandwich, where one thing at one layer does the many operations of things at an upper layers. And same thing happened with software as well. So over time, in 30 years of academia, as I kept on moving up the abstraction, it was inevitable that we went from just designing devices and objects to things that work with real life, either sensors or humans. Humans, of course, every time you touch a surface, there is some piece of software somewhere that kicks into action that it starts to determine things. And over time, it's not just touching, it's also sound, it's also your looks, and it's also your facial expressions. So my students have worked in my lab on building systems, on building devices, on building software pieces, now building methods and tools that allow us to interact with real life better. Real life interaction can be interaction with airflows, or interaction with sounds like in a hearing aid, or interaction with your motion like gaits and so on. So more recently, my students have been working on taking time series of data from these devices or real life interfaces, and then making intelligent deductions. And this is where the excitement is just enormous.
HDSI, the Halıcıoğlu Data Science Institute, is such a great resource, I think, for these students looking to get into this industry. Could you talk a little more about what that was like getting HDSI started and where it is today?
So the roots of HDSI data science go back when I was chairing computer science. By the way, I absolutely love that you get Halıcıoğlu right. And, it's not that hard once you say it a few times.
Yeah.
And so when I was chair of computer science, it was clear that computer science as a field was evolving and new shoots were coming out. Up until then, in the last 30, 40 years, computing was all about something to do with computers. It's software, it's hardware, how you build it, how you verify it, how you test it. But then it was also becoming clear is that the computing was means to other ends. My own area is embedded systems, which means computers inside something else, inside your cars, inside your hearing aid, inside your cell phones, and so on. So when we started thinking about it, we realized that in this means to an end, the data was central to insights that the computers were giving us. And the data could be real, life generated, could be synthesized, could be simulated, and so on. And a whole new area was emerging, which of course had computer science as one of the core elements, but also a lot of statistical analysis, where there is a long tradition of dealing with data, population data, genomic data, to demographic data, and so on. And then we were generating data significantly. Your cell phones are collecting data every millisecond, and so on. And they just keep growing. And you know that you keep buying more and more iCloud storage to do that. So then the question was, what can we learn from this data? Obvious things, you go to a clinic for your annual physical checkup, they take your blood pressure monitor. But then your data on your phone might actually have it on a daily basis or other biometric measurements. How is that not part of a practice, and so on? So to bring all of that together required not just a bunch of tools and methods that the computer scientists or statisticians were developing, but also a systems approach, also theory behind what it means to declare robustness of conclusions that you're making from data. Beyond the statistics, where actually you sort of assume certain distribution. What if you don't know the distributions of data, and so on? So your models had to be live, had to be online. Online and live are the same thing in the sense that they are making decisions while they're collecting data. It's like when you do a web search. If something new comes up during the search, is they able to pick up. Similarly, your large language models, are they updated? Are they actually informed by what is current state of the information ecosystem? So the roots behind that was that everyone on campus was talking about how data science will change their field, whether it is fisheries prediction, whether it is political trends prediction, whether it is economic data, whether it is sociological data, whether it is material discovery, whether it is biomedical devices. There was no part of the campus, there were no scientists who sort of didn't see the value of that. And the measurements were also increasing significantly in microscopy and mass spectrometers, which of course can do a lot more material discovery and so on. And so we started a conversation on campus in 2013 to 2016, where we said, well, in your area or in your domain, what will data science do, and what does it need to be advanced in? And so at that time, we interacted with a large number of faculty across the campus, researchers, and sort of got to a point on multiple town halls, multiple individual meetings, that there was a need for a centralizing presence of data science itself. We didn't spend time trying to define what data science would be, because that work needed to be done. But we knew that these are the people who will be working on. They are the ones who are most excited, they're the most interested in this, and they're the most to benefit and want the knowledge. So that was the genesis of HDSI. And in 2017, I and my co-director at that time, Jeff Hellman, who unfortunately passed away a year later, were asked to step in and just keep this conversation, and from that create a plan. So we sort of created a plan for data science.
What is it like today to see how it is now, with so many students interested? What is it like to kind of see it come to fruition?
So some things were completely unexpected. Some things were in our mission. Uh, Anything and everything we do at UC San Diego as a university has to do with producing talent for future. But where the talent goes in industry, academia, and other places, and nonprofits and so on, secondary matter, in the sense that we want to make sure that this is a talent that is going to be suitable for the next 100 years, let's say, in terms of the disciplinary advances. So we knew that whatever we did, it had to touch our students. Now, does that mean new courses, new degree programs, new internships, new work, new research projects, whatever the learning means was, and so that was in our mission. And now, 6 years later, we have 4 degree programs, bachelor's in data science, actually 5, bachelor's in AI, 2 jointly with computer science. Then you have master's in data science. You also have an online version of data science program. You also have a weekend version of data science. It's called MAS in data science. Then you have a PhD program in data science. And we now have under review a master's of science for physicians, MDMS program. We also have under review a program called hybrid masters, which means you start online, go in residence, or you start residence, go online, and you can swap back and forth. And so that, I think, allows us to make data science multi-platform and accessible to a much broader population. So that has come up nicely. What has been surprising is that we had the intuition, everybody knew at that time, that it will have a big impact. It's like today you look at large language model and say, oh my God, maybe this will do this, maybe it will do something else. And you have agentic AI and you have new intelligent AIs coming up. We can sort of see almost through a pipe that in the future there is very bright light, but we didn't know what it will look like. Remember, this was before LLMs, this was before even transformers and so on. Neural networks had just started to emerge in their capabilities. And what we found is that the developments have been faster than we anticipated. And today, it is fair to say that a commonly held notion is that the data science and its various technologies under AI umbrella are going to transform our society and almost every profession. Mm-hmm. Only debate is how much and over what period of time. Of course, the rapid development gives exciting expansion, but also is disruptive. So how much of disruption versus new things we will have. And I'm so glad, we are so happy that we actually started on this journey nearly 10 years ago and were prepared more than any other school in this country to actually benefit from and contribute to the areas of data science. And just the last thing I'll tell you, and this is where DSA comes in very handy. In the universities when we taught, especially in engineering and computer sciences and so on, we made a distinction between knowledge and skills. So you teach them calculus, or you teach them signal processing or information theory, and then you give them skills, let's say Java programming or Python programming or whatever have you. So you could sort of take every degree and course and you can sort of parse it into where it is on the knowledge and where it is on the skill. That was all fine, especially in last 150 years of all engineering advances. You asked a engineering student, hey, can you make this microphone smaller or take less power, let's say? You say, okay. And then you only become, say, optimization problem. What data science has done is added another dimension to this entire set. And that dimension is awareness. Before you say, let me optimize it for weight or power or cost, is this the right thing to do? this is a question no engineering student ever grapples with. Biologists sometimes did, like, can you make a super intelligent baby, for example, and then they say, before I get how to do it, is this the right thing to do, or is this the right supervision, so on. With data science is extremely important, that awareness. So knowledge is skill and awareness. Now DSA comes in on the awareness side of it, because this is where the universities were not yet used to understanding where the awareness is. Awareness is it appropriate? If it is appropriate, under what conditions it is applied, under what conditions it is used, and so on. So I think that newfound and new necessary awareness and responsibility are a key component of data science.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what has it been like seeing the conversation around, responsible data science, responsible AI, the ethics around it, kind of tying into what you're saying, the awareness of the impact this work can have? What has it been like as someone so in the industry to see that topic kind of grow and change over the years?
Yes. And, sometimes you don't even think about it if you're trained as an engineer to even ask the question, why are we doing this? Or should we do this? For example, and the capabilities are there. I mean, today we have devices and software and systems which can read faces or read your heart rate or read how dilated your pupils are and so on. And then you say, at what point it translates into creepiness from privacy, right? Just because it can be done, just because a company can determine all my historical demographic data and so on, is this what they should be doing if they are selling me a product or pricing me a product, for example? And so we have gone past the point where the obscurity of neural networks, you feed in a bunch of parameters to a computer and it says you're loan approved or not loan approved. And you say, why is it not approved? Well, I don't know. The computer said. Well, can I open it up? What was the reason? No, it's a neural network. It's a matrix multiply another matrix, and it came up with this probability of not accepting. And they say, well, does that make sense? And it is much, much harder on sociological levels. It is easier for me to predict how fast my car will accelerate or how fast it will decelerate and brake and what the braking distance will be. It is much harder to predict how I will perform as an engineer on a job. So all these automated resume readers and so on who are trying to basically predict how good a scientist you will be, or how good a student you will be, or how good a engineer you will be, or how good a team player you will be. They are in a space of extraordinary uncertainty, which is mixed with free will. Now, we could debate how much of free will exists and so on, but the point is that it is no longer the domain of engineering. It is no longer the domain of just science and technology. It is also the domain of cognition, perception. It's also domain of psychology. It's also domain of how social groups behave, how groups of people behave.
Is there a certain direction that you see the ethics and considerations of data science and AI going? And is there a certain trajectory you think we're on or hope we're on?
Yeah, so we actually hired experts in ethics, faculty members who actually worry about these things full time. My understanding is that the ethical dilemmas that the data science brings in go far beyond the philosophical dilemmas that we usually have. The classic, rail tracks problems, for example, where, is this the right choice or is this the morally right choice? From morality to responsibility, which means participation or ownership of the outcome, to reproducibility, truthfulness in there. we are now facing a whole new regime of considerations which sort of go under data and ethics. We normally think about ethics in prescriptive terms, but it is not necessarily prescriptive. Prescriptive means you shall not do this and you should not do that, the 10 Commandment type of things. But it is also surface. For example, the kind of decisions you make in your privacy, are those the right decisions you would make in public too? And if not, then why not? And so I think the ethical considerations will continue to open up and unfold in new dimensions in ways that we have not seen. Reproducibility is something that actually made the data science possible, at least in recent advances. David Donahoe at Stanford calls it friction reproducibility. In other words, the ease with which anyone working in data science can reproduce your results from your inputs is what has driven the tremendous advances in data science. And now going from that to scientific conduct, to discovery, especially a phenomena in which not all variables and not all parameters are known, is really a frontier of data science. And at the same time, in that frontier are questions of probity and proprietary.
Do you have advice for students who are pursuing this career, whether they're at HDSI or anywhere else, pursuing this general industry, when it comes to staying up to date on how much this is evolving and being aware of the considerations that need to be made?
So before I give the advice, I just want to say one preliminary thing. What computer science did that was not done before. In engineering, when we taught any subject, pick up any engineering, civil engineering or mechanical engineering or aero and so on, the part that differentiated engineering from other areas was that whatever we were teaching you in the classroom, you were practicing it almost the next day after graduation. What you learned in your classroom a month ago, or maybe 2 months ago, you got the degree and you went to a job, you were actually using that in designing a bridge or a chip or a computer or a plane or whatever you were doing. The point is the knowledge was put to practice immediately. And only way we could do that is because we also gave you skills, the tools that you could easily put the simulator in there. You could bend the metal, or you could test the metal, and you could work with the spectrographs or the equipment that will be in the production environment. So the knowledge and skills went together where they allowed you to put to practice your ideas into real products. And that sort of drove the economic engine and the innovation and the talent, made sure that you had enough practice and so on in your classrooms. But as computer science matured and as data science has evolved, it is not only the ability to put to practice what your ideas are, but go beyond it. Not only put to practice, for example, building a new microscope or a new particle accelerator, but even be curious about what the outcome of your work is. That curiosity, for example, you're making a microscope, then what it will be used for? Maybe internal cellular structures. You could be curious about what those are. Now, you're not trained as a biologist or something, but you could pick that up. So what data science has done is brought forth, magnified, and enabled your curiosity. Now, that curiosity is also a matter of habit. And this is where the advice part begins. You want to make sure that your curiosity, even when you're in college, keeps getting fed, so that when you come out, you hit the ground running on those things. It's similar to, for example, you make sure that you can program. If you're a computer scientist, if you're a electrical engineer, you make sure that you can design the circuit, put it into the simulator, SPI simulator, and simulate and make sure that you know that the operation amplifier works this way. Similarly, the habit of mind to be curious, it starts very, very nicely when you're very young, and then somewhere along the educational system it dies, or not dies, but at least gets dampened. Mainly because of the way our educational systems are structured. Maybe not everybody can answer it, and maybe it becomes annoying. I don't know what the cultural reasons are. What data science is going to do, it is already doing, is keep that curiosity gene active. And what you want to make sure is that without being annoying and so on, you are in the classroom, you are in your projects and so on, you're pushing the curiosity gene. And that is why in data science at UCSD, it's the only one that actually, the only major that does that. Every student does capstone project of their choosing, what they want to work on. And they define this. Why? Because that curiosity is going to be the source of lifelong learning.
I know you said sometimes that curiosity can kind of take a hit sometimes. Do you have any advice for bringing back curiosity of maybe students or maybe working professionals who, have been in their career for a while, are trying to kind of reignite that curiosity and that spark?
Yeah, so the curiosity needs legs. Curiosity doesn't exist in space. I could be curious about celestial things. I could be curious about material things. But that curiosity doesn't go very far unless I have a telescope to look at something. I have a microscope to look at something. The data science knowledge skill combination allows you to prototype quickly. So whatever you're curious about, how does this look like if I look at the data, let's say over the last 10 years, or even my own data, let's say I'm a runner and I've been running for last 3 years, and my watch records each of my runs. Well, am I pronating? What kind of profile I have in my heart rate? And do I have a big sodium peak in my heart rate somewhere? Potassium peak, and then I have it shows up as T wave, and then it settles down, or does my heart rate start to fluctuate? So the variability is good or not? These questions nobody will ask you. You will ask. But if you do not have the habit of asking, then you will walk through their life really, just like Socrates said, life not examined. Here, life not questioned, life not being curious about, has not yet got to the full potential. So, to answer your question, I think my sincere hope is that in the coming generations, the universities magnify curiosities in ways in which they're productive, in ways in which those curiosities actually lead to something, rather than just idle talk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you have, I'm asking you for all sorts of advice today.
Yeah.
Do you have advice for working professionals who maybe have found what they're interested in, or, in their careers in a role that they love? Like we were saying earlier, the tech is evolving so much. Do you have advice for them when it comes to kind of staying up to date on just what's new in the industry and kind of staying on top of things? Because obviously what students are studying now is very different from what people studied maybe 10 years ago. So how do you think working professionals who are maybe years into their career can kind of stay up to date on things?
So I'm going to give you a term which some people are beginning to use. Let's call it micro learning or even nano learning. There was a model where in order to learn something new, you needed to go back to school and sign up for a new master's degree or a new major or a new certificate program and so on. And we called it continuing education, we call it re-education, whatever that was. It is not possible in real life. You got life, and you're not going to spend 2 years learning, getting a new degree. My father, I don't know, has how many MA degrees. I don't, every time you want to learn a subject, he signed up for an MA in that degree. That was fine in those days. Then came the idea of reskilling. Well, you don't need to go for a degree, but maybe you take a 6-week class. Many of the universities have made that as a big promotional, and again, make it more convenient, so you can do it online, you can do it whatever. I think we are coming to a point where even that part of learning is going to come unbundled. And what will happen is you will learn individual, very small pieces of knowledge, just enough to get you past the next hurdle. So maybe you will never sign up for a degree in artificial intelligence or machine learning. But how does the transformer actually work? And you have enough algebraic or linear algebra background to just know what the attention matrix is. And there are people who are modifying those attention metrics. You may not know the rest of it. That's okay. So these micro learnings will become a bigger and bigger part of the menu. Just like you get up in the morning and in my days, you will pick up actual physical newspaper. I still do. But you will pick up, let's say, your tablet, and you will see what is the news of the day. One thing led to the other. If you have the curiosity gene, in the next 30 seconds, you learn something that you didn't know. And these things will accumulate more and more over time. So I think in terms of the advice is to be open to such opportunities, microlearning, and they're beginning to come up, especially now with AI agents and so on. You can find application or tutors for almost anything on your phone. You want to improve your accent, you want to improve your walking gait, you want to improve your weight training schedule, you want to do a better cooking. Again, one very small piece at a time. And I think that because there are platforms now that not only can teach you those things, then they can teach you interactively. For example, in improving my accent, somebody has to listen to me first, right? That was hard to do for a program, but today it is not. And so you would have interactive agents that will work with you on just the specific learning need that you would have. Will you get a certificate out of that or something? Yes or not. But right now, the evaluation mechanisms with the new jobs and so on are getting so more accurate and precise that if you apply to Google, they're not going to look for your degree or even your portfolio. They're going to just ask you a few questions and get to a depth of how far you know. And we have many ways tests. I mean, with the students, you can easily do that. You tell a student, okay, type something on the web browser or on an application and tell me what happens next, and see how deep they're going into it. That gives you the depth of their understanding.
I know you mentioned earlier how people every day pick up their phone, or maybe it's real newspaper. There are lots of resources really in the end. Is the point. Are there any that are your favorite resources, whether it's staying up to date, kind of on the tech news, the latest headlines, or maybe is there a go-to resource you like to use for learning?
So in recent months, this is how fast it has been going. I've been very impressed by how the next generation of large language models have been evolving. And I often go, to Perplexity or, any of the others and just ask questions and so on. They can summarize a document. I sometimes have a paper. I don't have enough time to read it. And so I say, can you summarize it? Get some summary. No. Can you expand that part? What does that mean? So just a few questions back and forth, I sort of got the gist of the paper. And you have to understand that it has been now more than 40 years, actually since I was 10, so 50 years now. I have basically read newspaper pretty much hard copy every morning if I'm not traveling or if I'm not on a plane or something. And so even for that traditionalist, I find these new tools extraordinarily good. Now, the field of large language models is evolving so fast that you could easily be lost. But again, you don't have to comprehensively master them, but just probe them enough, and it's something that I find very useful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, like you said, evolving so fast these days, it feels like.
Yeah.
Are there any trends or innovations lately that you feel especially excited or optimistic about?
A couple of things I'm very optimistic about. One is, if you look at all human knowledge, and let's say mechanically divide it into what is in the text form and what is in the numeric form. For example, all engineering was very numeric. It doesn't matter which engineering you did. Your problem, especially in an exam, came with a set of numbers, and the answer was a set of numbers. And if you got those numbers, you got the full points, and so on. The numbers have very interesting property. Between any two numbers is another number. In fact, infinitely many of them. So, from a point of view of a system design, when you look at the numbers, even if you have not seen a problem with those numbers, you could interpolate your answer. Okay? It's called inductive reasoning that you could do, where you could say, well, it is in this ballpark, for example. And that's how we sort of created our entire engineering and our physical world, where we built tools and methods in which just the material properties that were understood from physics and the set of numbers which sort of captured them allowed us to reason, build, design, architect things. What is exciting now is that we have gone beyond numbers into text. So you give me a piece of text. What does it really say? Does it contradict this proposition or does it support this proposition? That kind of reasoning, going beyond numbers, transductive reasoning, will become a part of day-to-day life. And I think that development is enormous, because then we get closer to what actual knowledge is, or what actual understanding is. Our understanding is the ability to anticipate, predict outcomes. In numerical world, it is easier to do. But in a real world of text and numbers, or even no numbers, it is harder to do. How will this person behave? How will this society behave to this particular proposition, for example? And so on. So those are sort of crossing the boundaries of domains from STEM to non-STEM. For a long time, STEM and non-STEM were sort of divided between word of numbers and word of something else, right? They will coexist. In fact, they will materially interact with each other.
That is a good way to put it. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your insight, and it's helpful to hear, the optimistic outlook on all of this. It is changing so much, so it's hard to keep up and can be overwhelming. So it's really helpful to hear your insight. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I know you've been supportive of DSA for a long time. We love HDSI. So it's really great to have you come on and share your insight. I'm sure we'll have you back soon as things keep changing, but thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Kellyanne. I appreciate being here, and thank you for taking the time.
If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, subscribe to our channel, and share it with a friend. And don't forget, the Data Science Alliance is a 501c3 nonprofit, and we would really appreciate your support. You can do a one-time donation, become a member, volunteer with us, or attend our events. We have lots going on all the time here in San Diego, California. Even if you don't live in San Diego, though, you can still get involved. Go to our website, datasciencealliance.org, to get started. Otherwise, see you here next time on The Data Slice.